Is it possible that a giant agency would risk everything, its reputation, its relationships, even human emotions, just for an unacknowledged tour strategy, while the disappointment of a top-tier actor like Park Seo-joon quietly surfaces as the most unsettling clue of all? That question now hangs heavily in the air, like a dense fog enveloping South Korea's entertainment industry. There has been no official statement, no firm clarification. Yet it is precisely within this silence that speculation grows wild, emotions intensify, and the public begins piecing together a narrative that feels far too deliberate to be dismissed as coincidence. The name Park Seo-joon, long known for his calm professionalism and near-total absence from controversy, has suddenly emerged in a swirl of rumors involving HYBE, Korea's most powerful entertainment agency, and two global icons whose friendship has captivated the world for years. Jungkook and Taehyung, it all began with a subtle shift in demeanor. There was no dramatic press conference, no emotional social media post. And that is exactly what makes it chilling. Park Seo-joon, usually warm yet composed in interviews, started appearing more guarded, more restrained, more distant. In several public appearances, his expression carried a trace of emotional fatigue that could not be explained by a busy schedule alone. The question quickly followed: was this merely a coincidence, or a sign of something far more serious happening behind the scenes? Almost simultaneously, public attention returned to the dynamic between Jungkook and Taehyung. These two are not merely BTS members. They are symbols of a bond forged through trainee days, global pressure, and relentless industry expectations. Every interaction between them has always been dissected and analyzed. But lately, something feels off. Distance, misaligned schedules, activities that seem deliberately arranged to avoid overlap. Is this simply a natural consequence of preparations for a massive tour, or part of a far more calculated plan? HYBE, to this day, has confirmed nothing. It has neither denied nor acknowledged the rumors. In the Korean entertainment industry, silence is rarely neutral. More often, it signals calculation. And this is where suspicions intensify that an unprecedented global tour, rumored to be one of the most ambitious projects in the company's history, may require sacrifices not everyone is willing to accept. Park Seo-joon, while not directly tied to BTS, is known to share a long-standing personal relationship with some of its members, particularly Taehyung. For years, this friendship was seen as a rare example of genuine, agenda-free connection across industries. So when speculation arose that Park Seo-joon felt disappointed by HYBE's direction, the public began asking a sharper question: what exactly did he witness or experience that made such disappointment impossible to fully conceal? Industry observers note that large-scale global tours often involve extreme image mapping. Every interaction, every narrative, even personal closeness can be reassessed based on market impact. If that is the case, then the possibility of deliberately managing distance between Jungkook and Taehyung for strategic reasons is not far-fetched. But should human friendship really be treated as a variable that can be adjusted at will? This is what makes the story deeply emotional. It is no longer just about schedules or stage concepts. It is about people, about relationships built over years, and about the disappointment that arises when personal values collide with corporate interests. In this unfolding narrative, Park Seo-joon becomes a symbolic figure, close enough to understand, yet distant enough to feel powerless. Small clues continue to surface. Interviews abruptly cut short. Smiles that no longer feel effortless. Ambiguous remarks about priorities and life phases delivered without clear context. To the casual observer, these moments may seem trivial. But to fans who have followed every detail for years, even the slightest change feels like an alarm. And when alarms sound from multiple directions at once, suspicion becomes impossible to ignore. Is HYBE truly willing to do anything to ensure the tour proceeds as planned? Is the apparent distance between Jungkook and Taehyung simply a logical outcome of overwhelming schedules? Or is there a colder, more calculated strategic decision at play, one the company is not yet ready to reveal? For now, All of these questions remain unanswered. What is certain, however, is that disappointment, if Park Seo-joon indeed feels it, does not emerge without cause. In an industry built on compromise, disappointment often signals that a line has been crossed, that a value has been violated. And when such disappointment becomes visible to the public, it turns into a mirror reflecting the darker side of an industry rarely discussed openly. This story is far from over. In fact, it may only be beginning. As long as HYBE remains silent, as long as preparations for the massive tour continue without detailed explanation, and as long as every interaction between Jungkook and Taehyung is scrutinized under a microscope, speculation will persist. Every small gesture may become a new clue. Every silence, an unspoken admission. Will HYBE eventually break its silence and dismantle these suspicions? Or will time reveal that Park Seo-joon's disappointment was the first warning sign of a much larger truth? Amid all these questions, one thing grows increasingly clear. Behind the glittering stage lights and deafening cheers of a world tour lies a human story far more fragile, far more emotional, and far more real than the industry would like to show. And perhaps the most disturbing question of all is this: if an agency as powerful as HYBE truly has the ability to regulate distance between two friends for the sake of strategy, then where does humanity stand in the modern entertainment industry? That question continues to echo, waiting for an answer still hidden behind the grand curtain of the global stage. The silence surrounding this situation has begun to feel louder than any official announcement ever could. In the absence of confirmation, the public imagination fills the gaps, weaving together timelines, expressions, and absences into a story that feels uncomfortably coherent. What unsettles many observers is not merely the possibility of strategic separation, but the speed and efficiency with which such a separation could be normalized, framed as necessary, and quietly accepted as part of the system. When success is measured in ticket sales, global reach, and flawless execution, where do personal bonds fit into the equation? For Jungkook and Taehyung, their connection has never been marketed as a gimmick, yet it has always been impossible to ignore. Their history is embedded in countless behind-the-scenes moments, unscripted glances, shared laughter, and mutual reliance during some of the most intense years of their careers. To suggest that this bond could be deliberately minimized, even temporarily, forces fans and critics alike to confront a harsh reality. In a hyper-optimized industry, even authenticity can be inconvenient. This is where Park Seo-joon's perceived disappointment takes on deeper meaning. As someone who has navigated fame without surrendering his private values to constant exposure, his quiet shift in tone feels symbolic. It suggests a moral dissonance, a moment where understanding turns into discomfort. If someone outside the immediate machinery of idol management senses that something is off, it implies that the issue may not be trivial. It implies that what is happening resonates beyond contracts and schedules, touching something fundamentally human. Rumors persist that the upcoming tour requires a carefully controlled narrative, one that prioritizes individual branding and market segmentation. In such a framework, closeness can be seen as a risk rather than a strength, an emotional variable that cannot be easily predicted or monetized. Yet this logic, while efficient, strips the story of its soul. Fans did not fall in love with perfection alone. They fell in love with connection, with the feeling that what they were witnessing was real. As days pass and HYBE maintains its silence, that sense of unease deepens. Silence, in this context, becomes a strategic tool, allowing multiple interpretations to coexist while avoiding accountability. But silence also invites mistrust. Each unaddressed rumor adds weight to the suspicion that the truth, whatever it may be, is too complicated or too damaging to be spoken aloud. Emotionally, this moment feels like a fracture point, not a dramatic collapse, but a subtle crack that spreads slowly. For fans, it raises uncomfortable questions about complicity. For artists, it underscores the limits of autonomy within a system designed to maximize output. And for the industry as a whole, It exposes a contradiction at its core: the demand for authenticity paired with an intolerance for anything that disrupts control. Whether or not the alleged separation is real, the reaction to it reveals something undeniable. People are no longer content to consume polished results without questioning the cost. They are asking who pays the price when strategies are executed flawlessly, when tours are sold out, when silence replaces explanation. They are asking whose emotions are being managed, whose relationships are being adjusted, and whose disappointment is being quietly ignored. If HYBE eventually speaks, it may attempt to reframe the narrative as a misunderstanding, a coincidence of schedules, a temporary phase. But even then, the impact of this moment will linger. Because once the possibility is introduced that bonds can be engineered around, that closeness can be deemed inconvenient, it cannot be unseen that in the end, this story is not only about Jungkook, Taehyung, or Park Seo-joon. It is about the invisible negotiations that define modern stardom. It is about the fragile balance between ambition and empathy, between global success and personal truth. And as long as that balance remains unresolved, the question will persist, echoing quietly but relentlessly. How much of themselves must artists give up for the world to keep applauding? As this tension continues to simmer, what becomes increasingly clear is that the public is no longer just watching from a distance. They are emotionally invested, not simply in outcomes, but in intentions. Every delayed appearance, every carefully worded response, every visible absence feeds a growing sense that something essential is being negotiated behind closed doors. And when transparency is replaced by choreography, trust begins to erode, not all at once, but gradually, almost imperceptibly. For Jungkook and Taehyung, this moment may represent one of the most difficult paradoxes of modern fame. They are celebrated for their individuality, yet bound by a system that thrives on predictability. They are encouraged to express themselves, yet guided, sometimes firmly, toward expressions that align with broader objectives. In such an environment, even silence can feel like a decision made on one's behalf. And that is where the emotional weight truly lies. Not in what is said, but in what cannot be said. Park Seo-joon's role in this narrative continues to feel quietly significant. Not because of anything he has openly declared, but because of what his demeanor seems to suggest. Disappointment, when unspoken, often speaks louder than anger. It carries the implication of unmet expectations, of a line crossed not out of malice, but out of indifference. If his disappointment is real, then it may reflect a broader discomfort shared by those who still believe that success should not require emotional distancing as collateral damage. The industry, however, moves forward regardless of sentiment. Schedules tighten. Concepts are finalized. Tours are announced with immaculate precision. From the outside, everything appears controlled, even triumphant. Yet beneath that polished surface, the unresolved questions continue to pulse. Can an industry that profits from emotional connection afford to treat genuine bonds as logistical obstacles? And if it does, what happens when audiences begin to sense the difference? What makes this situation particularly haunting is its familiarity. Similar patterns have emerged before, in different forms, with different names. Moments where artists were subtly repositioned, relationships quietly redefined, narratives gently reshaped to suit a larger vision. Each time, the justifications sounded reasonable. Each time, the emotional consequences were downplayed. And each time, the industry moved on, while the memory lingered with those who noticed the change. Now, that memory is forming again. It lives in the questions fans ask late at night, in the uneasy feeling that something authentic is being withheld. It lives in the growing awareness that admiration does not have to mean silence, and that curiosity is not betrayal. The audience is no longer satisfied with spectacle alone. They want meaning. They want reassurance that the humanity they see reflected on stage still exists beyond it. Whether this chapter ends with clarification or continues to fade into ambiguity, its impact is already undeniable. It has exposed a fault line between expectation and reality, between emotional truth and strategic design. And once such a fault line becomes visible, It reshapes how everything else is perceived. Perhaps, in time, the silence will break. Perhaps explanations will come, wrapped in careful language and measured reassurances. Or perhaps nothing will be said at all, leaving the story to exist only in fragments and feelings. But even then, the echo of this moment will remain, asking quietly but insistently whether the future of global entertainment can truly be built without honoring the very connections that made it powerful in the first place. Even as the weeks pass, the undercurrent of tension does not dissipate. It only grows more palpable. Every public appearance of Jungkook and Taehyung is dissected by fans and commentators alike, each gesture and glance scrutinized for signs of strain or distance. It is as though the world has become a microscope, magnifying even the smallest shifts into potential evidence of a larger narrative. And yet, the true story remains inaccessible, locked behind opaque walls of corporate strategy and carefully managed public relations. The emotional resonance of this situation cannot be understated. Fans are not merely consumers of content. They are participants in a living, evolving drama. They have invested years of trust and affection, rooting for the authenticity of the bond between these two artists. When that bond appears to be threatened or manipulated, the reaction is visceral. Messages flood forums, social media explodes with speculation, and collective concern morphs into a demand for answers. In this sense, the audience becomes a force in itself, pressuring both the artists and the agency to acknowledge realities that might otherwise remain hidden. Meanwhile, Park Seo-joon's subtle but unmistakable disappointment continues to act as a catalyst for conversation. It is an emotional breadcrumb trail, hinting at truths the agency might prefer to leave buried. He is not directly involved in the tour, yet his perspective carries weight precisely because he stands outside the machine, yet close enough to perceive its inner workings. His muted responses, fleeting expressions, and careful choice of words create a tension that speaks volumes. When silence becomes a statement, every nuance becomes amplified, and his quiet disapproval resonates with fans who recognize the unspoken implications. The stakes are immense. For HYBE, the tour represents not just financial gain, but cultural influence, global visibility, and strategic momentum. Every decision must be calculated, every movement measured. But at what cost? When strategic imperatives collide with personal bonds, the fallout is not easily contained. Even if the agency successfully navigates logistical hurdles, the emotional consequences linger. Trust erodes quietly, relationships are strained, and the public, once captivated solely by performance, begins to question the integrity of the narrative itself. In this context, the potential separation of Jungkook and Taehyung becomes more than a scheduling issue. It becomes emblematic of a larger ethical question within the entertainment industry. Can artistic authenticity coexist with corporate imperatives? Is it possible for a company to engineer outcomes without diminishing the humanity of those at the center? Or are connections like these inevitably treated as expendable variables in a complex equation, sacrificed for efficiency and spectacle? Fans are already imagining answers, constructing elaborate theories based on minute observations, a lingering pause during interviews, a careful distance in public photos, the timing of social media interactions. Each detail is interpreted, analyzed, and debated. And yet, these interpretations, while fervent, are only fragments. The truth, as always, remains layered, nuanced, and partially hidden. What makes this narrative especially compelling is its simultaneity of visibility and opacity. The world sees Jungkook and Taehyung on stage, hears their voices, witnesses their smiles, and yet the private calculus guiding their schedules and interactions remains concealed.